When we were young, I followed her with everything I had, but she was always dismissive and distant. She lied to me about which college to choose, carelessly wasted my affection, and constantly cut me down with her words. Years later, she tried to force her way back into my life with flashy displays of wealth, finally admitting she'd cycled through boyfriends just to make me come back to her. But I'd already moved on, married the love of my life, and I knew with absolute certainty that she was never the one worth fighting for. My childhood sweetheart and I had been dating for 3 years in high school. We had a long-standing plan to apply to the same university together. But when I went to find her, acceptance letter in hand and full of joy, I overheard her casually tell someone else, "If he wants to go, let him." It was just something I said. I wasn't serious. In that instant, it felt like a blade had been driven straight through my heart, the pain so sharp it left me numb. I collapsed right there on the floor and cried for a good half hour before I could pull myself back from the brink. Waves of grief, heartbreak, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal washed over me, but they receded as quickly as they came. And then I felt strangely calm. The emotional storm that had threatened to drown me just moments before had vanished like a receding tide, leaving only stillness behind. I wiped the tears from my face, took a deep breath, and walked over to Ava. "I got my acceptance letter," I said, my voice steady. For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but maybe I was just imagining it. Ava cleared her throat. "Yeah, I got mine too." I just stared at her, not moving a muscle. "You promised," I started, "that if we both got into the same school, you would—" "James, I'm sorry," she cut in, turning her head to avoid my eyes. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you. My mom doesn't want me to go into medicine. She made me apply to USC. But you said your dream was to be a doctor," I asked, keeping my voice low. She frowned, her expression laced with annoyance. "You know how my mom is. She's always so overbearing. She said being a doctor is exhausting and thankless, so she insisted I apply for the finance program at USC instead." I looked down and didn't say another word. So this was the excuse she was going to use to casually get rid of me. "Ava, do you really think anyone would buy that?" I thought. "Sure, your mom is intense, but when has she ever actually won an argument with you? Isn't she always the one who caves in the end?" I kept these thoughts to myself. I just looked at her and asked calmly, "So, we're not going to the same university. Is that it?" "I'm sorry, James. Don't be mad. I'll treat you to dinner tonight," Ava said, trying to placate me. "Besides, even if we're at different schools, we can still talk. We can call, FaceTime, whatever." I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. "Ava," I said over my shoulder, "don't bother. There is no us anymore, and I won't be contacting you." Over the summer, Ava tried to hang out a few times. I always made up an excuse to say no, and eventually she stopped asking. She was super active on social media, though, so I saw her posts every time I opened the app. You could tell she was having a great time, always out with friends or traveling somewhere new. One day, she was posting from the Grand Canyon. The next, she was already in Yellowstone. Today, I opened Instagram and saw she'd posted a few pictures from the beach in Malibu. There were 6 or 7 people in the photos, all of them familiar faces. So were her classmates. Others were friends we grew up with, a mix of guys and girls. In one of the group shots, she was standing with her back to the ocean, her smile as bright as the sun. See, she was perfectly happy without me. It suddenly reminded me of something I'd told her once. I said that after her final exams, I wanted to go see the ocean. She had just scoffed. "What's so great about the ocean?" The disinterest was playing on her face, so I dropped it. It wasn't that she didn't like the ocean. She just didn't want to go with me. "He's so clingy, it's really annoying." That's what I'd overheard her say. I never realized I was that much of a nuisance to her. So much so that to get away from me, she'd invent a fake dream of becoming a doctor and applying to Johns Hopkins. I applied to Johns Hopkins, and she secretly applied to USC. Did she really want to get away from me that badly? Did she hate me that much? I'm not some pathetic guy who can't take a hint. I have my pride. If I'd known how much she couldn't stand me, I never would have followed her around like a lost puppy. But before all this, I could have sworn she actually cared about me. Ava and I were childhood sweethearts, the kind who grew up right next door to each other. Our houses were side by side. We'd been neighbors for more than a decade. We first met in preschool. My family had just moved to the neighborhood, and I was the new kid at school, miserable because I couldn't see my old friends anymore. For the first week, I cried every single day, standing at the gate with red-rimmed eyes, refusing to go inside. One day, as I was sniffling in a corner, Ava came over and handed me a lollipop. She patted my head and said, "A cute boy like you shouldn't be crying. It doesn't look good." From that moment on, I became her little shadow. I followed her everywhere, and not just at school. Once I realized we were neighbors, I'd come home from school, drop my backpack at my front door, and run straight over to her house. My mom just laughed, helpless to do anything about it. Mrs. Miller, Ava's mom, was thrilled. She used to say it was like getting a bonus son. To be honest, even Ava's parents were surprised at first by how much I stuck to her. They never expected Ava to have that much patience with me. She usually didn't like playing with boys, complaining they were too rough and clumsy. "Ava, honey, why do you like hanging out with James so much?" Mrs. Miller asked her one day. "Because he's cute," Ava answered, pinching my cheeks. "He has dimples when he smiles, and I like seeing him smile." I just grinned foolishly as she did it. "I like playing with you too." My parents doted on me. The Millers were wonderful, and Ava was always kind to me. So I had a completely carefree childhood. Kids who were coddled like that could be a bit immature. And even in high school, I still thought of myself as a kid. And Ava, to me, was always like a cool older sister. It was her who started closing the distance between us, making me realize I wasn't a little kid anymore and could have the kinds of feelings a guy has. In my freshman year, I got my first love letter. I stood there stunned for a long time, thinking, asterisk, a girl actually likes me. Asterisk, I thought it was kind of funny, so I went to tell Ava about it. I wasn't prepared for how her face immediately darkened. "James, you're only a freshman. No dating," she warned me, dead serious. "Of course not. I don't even like her," I said without thinking. "What if you do meet someone you like? Are you going to date them then?" She suddenly seemed agitated and grabbed my arm. "I don't care. You're not allowed to like anyone else." "James, I won't let you." Ava stared at me, her eyes burning with an intensity one couldn't comprehend. In that moment, something clicked in my head. Asterisk, could it be? Does she like me? Asterisk, maybe I'd watched too many movies because my mind instantly started playing a highlight reel of romantic scenes. But this time, the stars were her and me. The idea of being with Ava, dating and getting married like couples on TV, actually sounded amazing. Whoa, the more I thought about it, the hotter my face got, until I could feel my neck flushing. "Anyway, you have to promise me right now that you won't date anyone in high school," Ava said, laying down the law. I was still lost in my romantic daydream and just nodded enthusiastically. After that, I stuck to her even more. I used to run home after school to watch anime, but I changed my routine. I started waiting for her by the basketball court while she had dance practice, just so I could walk home with her. I was young and had no idea how to be subtle. My crush on Ava was written all over my face. Everyone could see it, and the dynamic between us slowly shifted. She used to call me kiddo and look after me like a little brother, worrying about every little thing. But gradually, I started to be the one looking after her. She always said it was a hassle to eat breakfast, so I started buying an extra one for her every morning and made sure she ate it on the way to school. If the forecast called for a cold front, I'd text her the night before to remind her to dress warmly. Whenever she caught a cold, I was more worried than she was. I'd have medicine ready for her, reminded her to take it on schedule, and drink plenty of fluids. At first, she'd laugh and call me her personal butler. But over time, she started getting annoyed. She said I was nagging her, that I sounded just like her mother. I felt hurt. I was only trying to look out for her. Then one day, she finally lost her temper with me. One night, during the summer before junior year, Ava's friends invited her to an all-night karaoke birthday party. She was worried her mom, Mrs. Miller, wouldn't let her go, so she came to me for help. She wanted me to lie for her, to tell her mom she was going to a friend's house for a study session and would be staying the night. Since all the parents saw me as the responsible one, Mrs. Miller believed me without a second thought and happily gave Ava permission. But later that night, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a post from one of her friends. It was a picture of them at the karaoke place, and they were drinking. I froze. Ava never drank alcohol. We were only 16. What worried me even more was that she'd been sick with a low-grade fever for a few days. Drinking would only make it worse. In the photo, I could see a line of empty bottles on the table. I had no idea how much they'd had. The more I stared at the picture, the more I panicked. I tried calling Ava, but she didn't answer. I paced around my room for half an hour, my anxiety growing, until I couldn't stand it anymore. I ran over to her house and told Mrs. Miller everything. That night, Mrs. Miller drove straight to the karaoke bar and dragged Ava home. Right there in the party room, in front of everyone, she laid into the birthday boy, telling him he was a terrible influence. Ava was grounded for 3 days straight, stewing in her anger. The second she was free, she stormed over to my house. It was the first time I'd ever seen her truly furious with me. She screamed at me to stay out of her business. "Who do you think you are, James? You have no right to tell me what to do," she yelled. "I can't stand people who go tattling behind my back." I'd never seen her so vicious, and I was completely stunned. When I got home, there was a heavy feeling in my chest that wouldn't go away for days. I made a silent promise to myself that I was done with her. I didn't contact her for the rest of the summer. Then, not long after senior year started, it was my birthday. Ava showed up at my door with a huge gift box. Inside was the gaming console I'd been wanting for ages but couldn't afford. She stood there, looking up at me with a pathetic expression. "James, I'm so sorry. Please don't be mad at me anymore, okay?" Whatever resolve, I had just melted on the spot. I couldn't hold out for more than a second before I forgave her. After that, Ava and I still had our arguments. But every single time, all she had to do was sweet-talk me a little, and I'd forget all about it. During the spring semester of our senior year, I asked Ava where she was planning to apply to college. She said she wanted to be a doctor and was aiming for Johns Hopkins. "What about you?" she asked. "I'll go wherever you go," I said without even thinking. A part of me was nervous, though. Getting into Johns Hopkins was incredibly competitive, a place for geniuses. But Ava was completely confident, saying she would help me study. That was one of the things about her I could never say no to. She was genuinely brilliant. I studied way more than she did, but it didn't matter. I could never match her grades. She acted like she barely cared about school, yet she aced every test and was a favorite among the teachers. With Ava tutoring me, my own scores finally started to climb. "If I manage to get into the same school as you, will you grant me one wish?" I asked, my eyes full of hope. "Do I have a choice?" she replied, a playful smile at the corner of her eyes. "Nope. If you say no, I'll lose all my motivation to study." Fine, I promise," she said, pretending to be exasperated. We both knew exactly what that wish was. My plan was simple. The moment I got my acceptance letter from Johns Hopkins, I was going to tell her how I felt. When the SAT scores were released, it was pretty much what I expected. I had the scores for Johns Hopkins. But it was only when the actual acceptance letters arrived that I realized Ava had planned this all along. All she wanted was to get rid of me. On move-in day, everyone was excitedly dragging their suitcases across campus. I was the only one with a dark cloud over my head, feeling lower than I'd ever felt. Being played like that by the girl I loved made me start to seriously question myself. Was I really that unbearable? Did she really go to all that trouble, planning for so long, just to be free of me in college? Ava's grades had always been way better than mine. Honestly, I never truly believed I'd end up at the same school as her anyway. My only real hope was that we'd at least be in the same city. I wouldn't have minded the travel. I would have taken a bus to see her whenever I had a free day. And of course, Ava knew that's what I was thinking. But she didn't want that connection, so she lied. She made sure we wouldn't even have the chance to be in the same state, let alone the same city. Baltimore and Los Angeles are thousands of miles apart. She got exactly what she wanted. That first semester of freshman year, I felt like an empty shell. I couldn't focus in lectures. I'd just space out and scroll through my phone. Eventually, I pretty much stopped trying it all. I was surrounded by pre-med students who were studying nonstop, and I was the odd one out. I had never been interested in medicine or even considered becoming a doctor. The only reason I'd applied to the program was for Ava. I had imagined it a million times, us in college together, holding hands, walking across the quad, lost in our own perfect world. The part about actually having to study hard in college had never really crossed my mind. The real turning point came during winter break of my freshman year. I was on a flight home when the middle-aged man in the seat next to me suddenly went into cardiac arrest. He stopped breathing. It was the first time I'd ever seen anything like it, and I was completely frozen in shock. As the flight attendants and other passengers panicked, an older man stood up and immediately began performing CPR. After 20 minutes, the man's breathing started to even out, and he woke up just before we landed. The moment he opened his eyes, I saw several people around us tearing up. Just moments before, he had been dying right in front of us, and now he was alive. The stark contrast made me understand for the first time just how powerful the act of saving a life was. And I'll never forget what the man who saved him said afterward. His words echoed in my head. "I'm a doctor. Seeing a doctor pull someone back from the brink of death with his own hands was a profound experience I will never forget. I always knew that doctors save lives, but I'd never witnessed it so closely. I never realized how truly awe-inspiring it is. To be able to do that, to have that skill, earned my deepest respect. Without even realizing it, a new thought took root in my mind. I wanted to be like him. For the first time in my life, I had a real, burning desire for my future. I wanted to be a doctor. For the rest of that winter break, I locked myself in my room. I went back over every single thing I neglected during the first semester and taught it to myself, piece by piece. I didn't go out, didn't see friends, and didn't make any attempt to contact Ava. I didn't even know if she was back in town. For the rest of my time in college, I threw myself into my studies, determined to excel in every class. The pre-med track was brutal, twice as exhausting as senior year of high school ever was. I was up studying before sunrise and didn't stop until the dead of night, when the sky outside my window was full of stars. Dragging my exhausted body from the library back to my dorm became my daily ritual. My schedule was relentless. It felt like there were never enough hours in the day. Throughout my 4 years of undergrad, I barely had a moment to just hang out or have fun. But all the hard work paid off. I earned a scholarship every semester, and my professors started to know me by name. It turns out that being busy is the best cure for a broken heart. The memory of Ava began to fade. Every now and then, I'd hear bits of news about her from old high school friends. They said she had a boyfriend. I heard that during her spring semester, Ava started dating one of the most popular guys on campus at USC. The relationship only lasted about 3 months before they broke up. Over the next 3 years, she dated a few other guys. None of the relationships ever made it past a single semester. The first time I saw a picture of her with a new boyfriend in our old high school group chat, I felt nothing but a sense of calm. That's when I knew I was truly over her. The first year of med school, I started dating someone too. Her name was Hannah, and she was a sophomore in the School of the Arts. She was there on a scholarship and was absolutely beautiful. On a recommendation from one of my professors, I became the medical assistant for the university's dance company. That's when I discovered our university even had a School of the Arts. It was full of students on performance scholarships, and their curriculum had nothing to do with medicine. They didn't have to deal with any of the grueling courses that we med students had a love-hate relationship with. I was so used to the male-dominated halls of the medical school. The first time I walked into the arts building and saw the dance company rehearsing, I was mesmerized. Rows of elegant dancers moved in perfect sync. It was so beautiful, I couldn't tear my eyes away. It felt like a door to a whole new world had been opened for me. The one I found myself watching the most was the team captain, Hannah. She had this cool confidence when she danced that was completely captivating. What I never saw coming was that after I helped her with a minor knee injury, she asked me out. Her directness caught me completely by surprise. I just stood there, stunned, completely forgetting to play it cool. My mind went blank, and I just instinctively nodded yes. It was only later that I found out from her teammates that she had a crush on me since her freshman year. And it all started, apparently, with a Band-Aid. When she brought it up, the memory slowly came back to me. About a year earlier, I saw a girl cut her hand while opening a package outside the campus store. Blood started dripping from her finger right away. I quickly grabbed my first aid kit, hesitated for a second when I saw the only Band-Aid I had left was covered in cartoon pigs, but gave it to her anyway. I just remembered thinking she was cute because her face turned bright red when she put it on. I never would have guessed that girl was Hannah. It's funny how fate works sometimes. She told me that pretty much everyone on the dance team knew she had a crush on me. She would even sit in on random elective classes at the med school just for a chance to see me. Her teammates were always telling her to just go for it and ask me out. But she'd heard I was a total workaholic who only cared about my studies, so she was too intimidated to say anything. The day I was officially introduced as the team's medical assistant, she was over the moon. Her teammates teased her, saying she was always showing off in front of me like a peacock, trying to make sure I saw her best moves. Eventually, one of her friends got fed up and told her, half jokingly, that if she didn't make a move soon, she would. Hearing her friend admit to having a little crush on me too sent Hannah into a panic. So that day, while I was wrapping her knee, her friend deliberately started to ask, "Hey, James, are you free later?" I was wondering. "He's busy." Hannah cut her off instantly. Then she looked right at me, took a deep breath, and asked, "James, will you be my boyfriend?" "Yeah, okay," I said. The words were barely out of my mouth before she froze, looking at me like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Her friend nudged her. "Hello." He said yes. Hannah finally snapped out of it and gave me the biggest, sweetest, goofiest grin. After that, she was always teasing me. "Come on, be honest," she'd say. "You were totally into me from the start, weren't you? Why'd you say yes so fast? You were already planning something before I even asked, weren't you? Did you become our medical assistant just so you could see me every day? You probably had a secret crush on me this whole time, just playing it cool on the outside while you were secretly thrilled, right? Are you the type to just fall for someone in your head?" Her questions were so ridiculous I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I just played along. "Can't you just make something up to make me happy? Like, actually it was love at first sight. I orchestrated this whole thing just to get close to you." "Ah, I knew it," she'd say, lifting her chin with a triumphant look. "And I can't believe I let you get away with it." I always found her so entertaining. Even though she was younger than me, most of the time, she was the one taking care of me. She had so much energy. Every morning, she had a mandatory hour of dance practice. Before we started dating, she used to get up at 6:30 to practice before breakfast. After we got together, she started setting her alarm for 6. That way, she could finish her practice and still have breakfast with me. On days I was too lazy to leave my room, she'd bring breakfast right to my door. "You don't have to do all that," I'd tell her, feeling a little guilty. "Waking up that early can't be good for you. Don't you worry about me," she'd say with a wink. "You're my personal power bank. Just seeing you for a few minutes in the morning gives me enough energy to last the whole day." Maybe it was because of how well she took care of me, but being with Hannah was the first time I realized how genuinely happy a relationship could be. We almost never fought. If we had a disagreement, she was always the first one to compromise. She was so good at spoiling me that I found myself relying on her more and more. I'd always thought of myself as independent, someone who handled things on his own. But soon, even when I was craving a milkshake, my first thought wasn't to order one myself. It was to text Hannah and ask if she could grab one for me. It's true what they say, all that affection can make you soft. She always said she was going to spoil me so much I'd never be able to leave her, and honestly, she succeeded. When winter break came around, she insisted on driving me to the airport. "Are you sure you don't want me to come home with you?" she asked, putting on a serious face. "You've asked me that about 100 times now," I said with a sigh. "I don't even need to meet your parents. I could just get a hotel nearby, and you could sneak out to see me when you have time. Just promise me you won't forget about me." I never realized what a drama queen she could be. "Okay, stop it," I laughed. "I'll FaceTime you every day, how about that?" After finally getting her cheer up, I waved goodbye. A few days before Christmas, my mom told me the Millers had invited our family over for dinner. "Ava's bringing her new boyfriend home tonight," my mom said as she put on her shoes. Mrs. Miller said it's been too long since our families got together. So it's a good excuse for a party. Wow, she's bringing a guy home to meet the parents? I was suddenly interested. Is he good looking? Your aunt has only seen pictures, but she said he looks very sharp. That makes sense. Ava always had high standards, my mom chuckled. You know, when you two were kids, we used to joke that you'd end up together. Do you remember that? I played dumb. Really? I don't remember that. To me, Ava had always been more like a sister. It's funny how things work out my mom's side. You and Ava grew up together, but you ended up more like brother and sister. Which is nice, of course. But look at Ava. She's already had a few boyfriends. And you're in med school and still single. Her voice turned serious. I used to worry you'd start dating too young, but now you're in your 20s. Don't you think it's time? I clear my throat. Mom, I actually have a girlfriend. My mom's eyes lit up. Really? Where does she go to school? What's her major? She peppered me with questions about Hannah all the way to the Miller's front door. My dad pretended not to care, but I could tell he was listening to every word. When we got to the Miller's house, I saw a clean-cut young man sitting on the living room couch. He had short, dark hair and was wearing a crisp white shirt and slacks. After college, Ava didn't go to grad school. She went straight to work at her family's company, learning the business from her dad. This guy was her new assistant. I heard he was an Ivy League grad who'd been promoted to be her personal assistant less than a month after he was hired. It wasn't long before they started dating. Mrs. Miller had told my mom that his parents were both high school teachers from a good family. She was much happier with him than with Ava's last boyfriend, a guy who had a full sleeve of tattoos. This was the first time Ava had ever brought a boyfriend home, but it wasn't for a lack of dating. She'd even dated a bartender from a nightclub once. I remember being genuinely worried for her then. A guy who works in a bar every night can't be that straightforward, right? Luckily, that one fizzled out after about a month. Mrs. Miller had filled my mom in on all the details. From the sound of it, Ava's romantic life had been very busy the last few years. When we arrived at the Millers, the parents all went into the den to chat. I sat on the couch in the living room, pretending to be on my phone while I secretly watched Ava and her boyfriend's nonstop PDA. They were practically attached at the hip, either whispering to each other or looking at something on his phone. The only time Ava even acknowledged my existence was a quick hey when I walked in, before she immediately turned back to the game she was playing with him. How are you so bad at this? Stop running off. Stay with me. You hit another trap. Now they're all coming after you. From their conversation, I could pretty much guess which game they were playing. It reminded me of Hannah. She was the one who got me hooked on it in the first place. I'm terrible at games, the kind of person who gets lost in a shopping mall. But Hannah was always incredibly patient with me. No matter how badly I messed up, even if I gave away our position in the final round and got us both eliminated, she never got mad. She would just laugh and say, "It's fine. It's just a game." At dinner, the parents couldn't stop complimenting Ava's boyfriend. They said he looked so sharp and seemed so competent. My mom even went as far as to ask, "So, what are you two planning on getting married?" Ava just smiled and didn't give a direct answer. I noticed her boyfriend's smile freeze for a split second. "So, James," Mrs. Miller said, turning to me with a smile, "are you seeing anyone?" Before I could even open my mouth, my mom jumped in. "He is, and she's younger than him." Ava choked on her water and started coughing. Her boyfriend quickly patted her on the back. "What's the age difference?" Mr. Miller, who loved gossip, leaned in. "She's a sophomore, so she's 3 years younger," I said. "Oh, 3 years is nothing." Mrs. Miller laughed. "You'll have to bring her home for us to meet sometime." For some reason, just thinking about Hannah's face made me smile. I've been so much happier since we started dating. "Maybe next holiday," I said after a moment. "If I can make it back, I'll bring her by." Ava put down her fork. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, please enjoy the rest of your meal." "I'm finished," she said, then stood up and left the room. Her boyfriend quickly put his fork down too, gave us an awkward smile, and said, "I'm finished as well," before following her out. We stayed at the Millers for a little while after dinner, but since Ava and her boyfriend never came back, we eventually went home. Later that afternoon, I opened my front door to grab a package and was startled to see someone leaning against the wall. "Ava, what are you doing here?" "You're really dating someone?" she asked, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Yeah, I am, I confirmed. Ava was quiet for a long moment before she finally said, I'm sorry. About the whole college application thing. Oh, that, I said, trying to sound casual. Don't worry about it. It was a long time ago. In my mind, it had already become a distant memory. I was so immature back then, she said. I just wanted my own way. And I felt like you were too clingy, always trying to manage my life. So I just wanted to get away. That's why I lied about wanting to be a doctor. I knew if I said I was applying to Johns Hopkins, you'd apply too. At the time, what she did had hurt me deeply. But after all these years, I was over it. I found myself trying to comfort her. It's okay, Ava. I'm not mad anymore. It was selfish of me to hurt you like that, she said. I was only thinking about myself. I never once considered your future. You had your own dreams and goals. I shouldn't have interfered with your life like that. Her voice was thick with regret. I heard med school is incredibly tough, a really long program, that you can't survive it if you're not completely dedicated. You never wanted to be a doctor before. It must be so hard for you now. That's not it, Ava. I actually love it now. I cut in. Really? At first, yeah, it was rough. The classes were so hard I considered dropping out and reapplying somewhere else. But I stuck with it, and now I can't imagine doing anything else. My goal now is to become a surgeon. A good one. I've been on a scholarship since my sophomore year, so things are going pretty well. Ava smiled, tilting her head and looking at me in a way that reminded me of how she used to be. Wow, that's impressive, she said. Of course, I replied, feeling a little proud. Well, I wish you all the best then, she said sincerely. Thanks, I said, scratching the back of my neck, feeling a bit awkward. Hey, Ava, I added. I'm sure I was a huge pain back then, always following you around. I was just a dumb kid. I hope there are no hard feelings. She laughed. James, you were never a burden. I was the one who was immature and clueless. Not long after the semester began, I was out with Hannah when my phone rang. It was Ava. Are you free tonight? She asked, getting straight to the point. I want to take you to dinner. Huh? I was confused. You're not even in the same state. How are you going to do that? I'm in town for work, she said. Oh, well, I already have plans with Hannah tonight. Hannah, that's your little girlfriend, right? Perfect. Bring her along. It's not like I'm going to bite. Okay, I'll pick you both up at the campus gate at 6. And then she hung up. After I hung up, Hannah asked, who was that? An old neighbor, I explained. Kind of like an older sister figure. She's in town for work and wants to take us to dinner. At 6 o'clock sharp, my phone rang again. It was Ava, saying she was downstairs. Wait, how do you know which dorm I'm in? Wasn't that hard, she said confidently. You're the STAR Med student, right? I just asked a couple of people. I quickly called Hannah and told her to meet me downstairs. She was already waiting by the entrance when I got there. I walked over, took her hand, and we headed outside. A sleek black luxury car was parked in front of the dorm. It looked completely out of place against the old brick buildings and was drawing a lot of stares from other students. Standing next to it was a woman dressed to the nines. The whole scene was a spectacle. Not wanting to be gawked at, I grabbed Hannah's hand, gave Ava a pointed look, and said, let's just get in the car. A driver was waiting, so Hannah and I got in the back while Ava took the passenger seat. As we pulled away, she turned around and laughed. What was that all about? You look like you were running for your life. You and your car are a little conspicuous, I said with a laugh. I'd rather not be the main topic of gossip in my dorm. Oh, I didn't even think about that. My bad, Ava said, surprisingly apologetic. When the car pulled up to the restaurant, I was floored. The place was ridiculously fancy. Even more intimidating were the other patrons. Every man was in a suit, and every woman was in a cocktail dress. Hannah was in jeans and a sweater, and I was in a sweatsuit. We stuck out like sore thumbs. After we were seated, I leaned over and whispered to Ava, why did you pick a place like this? I thought we were just getting a casual bite to eat. Ava just laughed. This is casual. I was worried Hannah would feel awkward, but she didn't seem fazed at all. In fact, she seemed to be having a great time. I guess I was worried for nothing. On the drive back to campus, Hannah suddenly asked, so, Ava is really only 3 years older than me? Yep, same age as me, I confirmed. She seemed so sophisticated and smart, Hannah said, but also kind of immature. What do you mean? I asked. She snuggled up against my arm. She's into you. The whole dinner was a performance. She was trying to show off how much money she has to make me feel insecure. But I'm not falling for it. I'm tougher than that. Besides, she added, you like me. That's all the confidence I need, and no amount of money can buy that. No way, I said. Ava has a boyfriend. She just brought him home for Christmas. A woman's intuition, she said, is never wrong. After that dinner, Ava's business trips to my city became much more frequent. Every time she was in town, she'd find an excuse to meet me on campus. I saw her more in those 6 months than I had in the previous 4 years combined. And she always brought a gift. One time, I posted a random picture on Facebook from when I was at the mall. In the corner of the photo, you could just barely see a watch in a display case. I hadn't even noticed it was there. 2 days later, Ava showed up on campus and gave me that exact watch. It was insane. It was just a random picture. I hadn't even looked twice at that window display. That's when it really hit me that something was off. The next time she was in town and wanted to meet, I started making excuses. After I turned her down 3 times, she called me. Are you avoiding me? No, of course not. I've just been really busy, I lied. I barely have time for Hannah right now. She's already complaining. I don't need you to entertain me, she insisted. Just tell me where you are. I'll come by for a minute, just to see you, and then I'll leave. Ava, we're in the middle of a major lab project, and my professor is really strict. It's just not a good time, I said, holding my ground. Fine, she said. Then I'll wait outside your dorm. You have to come back eventually. I just want 1 minute. That's all. There was a stubbornness in her voice that told me she wouldn't give up. I sighed. It felt like I was trapped, so I agreed. When I got back to my dorm that night, she was already there waiting. She hadn't brought the fancy car, probably trying to be less conspicuous. She was even dressed down in casual clothes. I brought you some cake. My mom made it, she said, holding up a box. You can't refuse a gift from her. I thought for a second. Ava, let's go somewhere we can sit and talk. We went to a small coffee shop just off campus. The place was tiny, with small tables and chairs, and Ava, in her designer clothes, looked completely out of place. I bet it's been a while since you've been in a place like this, I said, a wave of sadness washing over me. Honestly, it feels like we live in 2 different worlds now. You're this successful businesswoman, always at fancy events, and I'm just a student stuck in a lab. James, please don't say things like that to push me away, she said, her voice full of hurt. It really upsets me. But it's the truth, isn't it? I replied. We grew up together, sure. But after high school, we went down completely different paths. That part of our lives is over. And it's the biggest regret of my life, she said, her eyes filled with a deep sadness I didn't understand. What? I asked, confused. If I had known then what it would be like without you, I never would have done it. I was so young and stupid. It's amazing how one decision can send your life in a completely different direction. Ava just kept staring at me. The truth is, I started regretting it almost as soon as I got to college. James, do you have any idea what it feels like to miss someone so much? I used to complain about how clingy you were. I just wanted to be free. But once you were really gone, I realized how much I actually needed you. She pressed her hand to her forehead. I never understood how important you were. You were like air. I never noticed you when you were around, but the moment you were gone, I couldn't breathe. I used to say how annoying it was to see you all the time, but in college, I realized those were the happiest days of my life. And now, it's this hard just to see you for a minute. I let out a small laugh. Ava, do you even believe that yourself? You started dating someone almost immediately after you got to college. How many boyfriends have you had since then? More than I can count on both hands. And now you're trying to play the part of the devoted, long-lost love. At that point, my patience was gone. Honestly, I had no desire to ever see her again. Our families were neighbors. Our parents were friends. The only reason I let the whole college application thing go was to keep the peace between them. But that doesn't mean I think she's a good person. I could be civil for our parents' sake, but I had made a firm decision to keep my distance from her. I guess one mistake just leads to another, Ava said with a bitter smile. I was so young, so stupid. I was all twisted up inside with this ridiculous pride. I felt like if I reached out to you first, it would be like I was admitting defeat. I was just too stubborn to make the first move. I thought that if I just dated other people, I wouldn't miss you so much. But even when I had a boyfriend, there was always this empty feeling inside. It wasn't what I really wanted. I even made sure word got back to you that I was seeing someone. I had this ridiculous hope that you'd get jealous and come find me. But you never did anything. I couldn't accept it, so I got another boyfriend. And it just kept getting more and more out of control. That's quite a strategy, I said bluntly. So you're telling me you've liked me this whole time, and your way of showing it was to date a new guy every few months? Well, then you kind of deserve to be miserable, don't you? Yes, she admitted without hesitation. Duh. It wasn't until I heard you had a girlfriend that I realized how crazy I've been. You weren't holding a grudge. You had actually truly moved on. I always thought the reason you didn't date anyone for all those years was because you were waiting for me. Ava, nobody just waits around forever, I said. I'm not that foolish, and you're not worth that. I know I don't deserve it. I've made too many mistakes, and it's too late to take them back. She grabbed my hand desperately, like a drowning person. James, I can change. If you like someone like Hannah, sweet and caring, I can be that person. I can be whatever you want me to be. Just please give me another chance. I pulled my hand away firmly. I have a girlfriend, and I love her. You had a boyfriend when you came to see me, I pointed out. We broke up right after Christmas. I'm single now, she interrupted quickly. That's your business, I said calmly. But I'm not breaking up with my girlfriend. This is the last time we're ever going to see each other. Don't come looking for me again. It's annoying. As I stood up to leave, I saw out of the corner of my eye that Ava had collapsed onto the table, her shoulders shaking. After that night, Ava never tried to contact me again. I think she finally got the message. My relationship with Hannah continued to be stable and strong. After I graduated from med school, I got a residency at Chicago General and finally became a surgeon. The work was demanding, but the spark between Hannah and me never faded. She always found time for me. Sometimes I'd be on a 24-hour shift, so busy I'd forget to eat, and she'd show up at the hospital with food. I'd wolf it down in the break room during a rare, quiet moment. No matter how exhausted I was, she always found a way to be there. Even my mom would say, Hannah is so good to you, James. Don't you ever take her for granted. When I was 28, I proposed to Hannah, who was 25. She had just finished her master's and was ready for the next chapter. On the morning of her wedding, I was so excited I woke up at 3 a.m. and just paced around the living room. In a few hours, I would be on my way to see my bride. From that day forward, our lives would be intertwined. I just got more and more excited. By the time the photographer arrived, they had to use a thick layer of concealer to hide the dark circles under my eyes. It was the first time I'd ever worn makeup in my life. It felt strange, but kind of fun. In the limo on the way to the church, I couldn't help but send Hannah a text. I typed in a mock pathetic tone. It's been 3 whole days. I miss you. She sent back a heart emoji. From today on, we'll see each other every single day. Yep, I texted back. And you have to give me a good morning kiss every day. We were messaging back and forth when my phone rang. The caller ID said Ava. I hesitated, then answered. James, I'm on the roof of the Willis Tower, she said. If you go through with this wedding today, I'm going to jump. My hand tightened around my phone. Ava, calm down. Don't do anything stupid. James, it's all my fault, she sobbed. Please, don't get married. Don't marry her. The thought of you spending your life with someone else makes me want to die. I can't bear it. I can't watch you walk down the aisle with another woman. Her voice was breaking, and she sounded completely hysterical. Hannah and I love each other, I said, trying to stay calm. We're getting married. We haven't done anything wrong. I don't care. I won't let you. If you go through with this wedding, I'll jump. The only thing I can do, Ava, is call 911. What happens after that is out of my hands, I said, making my position clear. So even if I jump, you're just going to get married anyway? That's your life, not mine. I can't control the choices you make. Fine, she said with a chilling laugh. Just fine. You're a cruel man, James Wilson. I'll make you regret this for the rest of your life. Then she hung up. I immediately dialed 911. I gave the dispatcher the address and a quick summary of the situation, then told my driver to continue on to the church. The wedding went off without a hitch. In my eyes, Hannah was the most beautiful bride in the world. After the reception, I got another call from Ava. I lied, she said, her voice faint. I didn't jump. I just needed to know for sure if there was any part of you that still cared about me. If there was, I was ready to fight for you. But I get it now. I was wrong. You don't care about me at all. Besides, she added, I couldn't really make you live with that guilt for the rest of your life. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I'm glad you didn't. After a moment of silence, she said, James, be happy. Thanks, I said. I will be. The first few years of our marriage were blissful. Then we had adorable twins, a boy and a girl, and our house was filled with happy chaos. Our family and the Millers still saw each other from time to time. When Ava turned 30, she finally gave in to her parents' constant nagging and agreed to be set up on some dates. She got married not long after, but less than a year later, they were divorced. Mrs. Miller came over to vent to my mom. She said she'd accidentally overheard Ava on the phone with her ex and found out the whole thing had been a sham. It was a marriage of convenience from the start. The guy was still in love with his high school girlfriend who had passed away and had sworn he'd never love anyone else. And Ava had no interest in a real relationship. Since both their parents were desperate for them to get married, they made a deal. They stayed married for a year to get their families off their backs, then divorced as planned. Now, whenever their parents bring up the subject of dating, they both just say, "What's the point? So we can get divorced again." That usually shuts them up. What is wrong with that girl? Mrs. Miller lamented to my mom. Coming up with such a crazy scheme. A fake marriage, just to trick us. Does she think marriage is a joke you can just start and stop whenever you feel like it? Mrs. Miller was in tears as she told my mom the story. My mom did her best to console her. Ava's parents were at a complete loss. Now they were too scared to push her, worried about what she might do next. So Ava stayed single. Then one day, she was being interviewed on some business channel. The host asked her why she'd never remarried. Because I let my true love get away, she said with a lazy smile. After that, I just found I couldn't seriously fall for anyone else. I don't want to waste anyone's time. True love. Hannah, who was sitting next to me on the couch, gave me a very pointed look. A sense of panic washed over me. I grabbed the remote and quickly changed the channel, forcing a laugh. Wow, I had no idea she even had a true love. Wonder who that could be. Daddy, who's your true love? My daughter asked, looking up from her blocks on the floor. That's easy, I said, pulling Hannah into a hug. It's your mommy. Nah, my daughter pouted. Mommy is my true love. No, she's mine, I teased. Mine, she insisted, her face turning red. When she realized she couldn't win, she just burst into tears. Hannah scooped our daughter up, giving me a look that clearly said, "Why are you picking a fight with a 4-year-old?" Our son ran over with a toy, trying to make his sister laugh. I looked at the scene, toys scattered everywhere like a war zone, my daughter sobbing her heart out, my wife and son trying desperately to calm her down. The beautiful, chaotic mess of it all made me smile. I got up and started my daily ritual, cleaning up the toys. It's a task that requires a lot of patience, but I loved it. I guess this is what life is all about, finding the warmth in all the little messy moments. 3 meals a day, the ordinary, everyday routine with my family. This simple, quiet happiness was everything I had ever wanted. One person clings to the past. The other transforms pain into a stepping stone for growth. This may be the story's greatest lesson. Truly letting go means leaving behind the people and things that drain you, so that you can become a more whole version of yourself. May we all find the clarity to walk away, because the best love is a mutual journey, not a one-sided chase.